In July of 1944, a sergeant named Curtis Cullen stood in a Normandy field with a cutting torch and sawed the steel legs off the beach obstacles the Germans had left behind on the invasion coast. He welded the teeth to the nose of a Sherman tank. On the 14th, General Omar Bradley came out to watch a hedgerow blow open like a door. 500 of Cullen's cutters were built before Operation Cobra. Here is the part nobody talks about. The Army did not merely tolerate that kind of ingenuity. It trained it into men on purpose, printed it in manuals, and put it on film. Then it sent those men home. Number 14 on this list was produced 50,000 times by the United States government and handed out like ballpoint pens. And building one in your garage today can cost you 10 years. Number 8 was so dangerous the Army destroyed every last one and classified the paperwork. And number 3 was a real American firearm that cost $2.10, took 6.5 seconds to assemble, and came off the line 1,000,000 times in 11 weeks. None of this was forgotten by accident. Every skill on this list was taught at government expense to a generation the government trusted with it, and then written out of the law by state legislatures and federal agencies who decided that the same hands were no longer to be trusted at home. The uniform came off. The knowledge did not. Only the permission did. Before we start, hit subscribe, because this channel is where that knowledge gets written down before the last men who used it are gone. Let's count down 25 weapons the U.S. Army taught every soldier to build and then made illegal at home. Number 25, the Trench Club. By 1915, the war had gone underground, and a rifle with a bayonet on the end is 4.5 feet of useless in a hole in the ground at 2 in the morning. So the units built their own. Regimental carpenters and metal workers turned them out in batches behind the lines, roughly 40 centimeters of hardwood, the end drilled out, and a lead weight dropped in, rows of hobnails hammered around the head. Some crews wired on the empty shell of a Mills bomb for good measure. Nobody wrote a requisition. Nobody had to. Today, New York Penal Law Section 265.01 makes it a crime to simply possess what it calls a billy, and a weighted stick in your truck is a misdemeanor arrest on the side of the road. Same object, same purpose. The only thing that changed was the address where a man keeps it. Number 24, the knuckle knife. The Army issued 2 of them in the First World War, the Model 1917 and the Model 1918 Mark I. And the 1918 was exactly what it sounds like. A double-edged blade with a full set of brass knuckles cast into the grip and a skull crusher on the pommel. Ordnance ordered it. The government paid for it. It came back out of the crates in the Second World War and went to American paratroopers because a man dropping into a hedgerow at night wanted something that worked whether or not he had room to swing. Today, California, Illinois, Michigan, and Vermont ban brass knuckles outright, and most states that allow the antique carve out an exemption only for the thing hanging on a wall. The Army handed that knife to 19-year-olds. 4 states now say a grown man cannot own the grip. Number 23, the French nail. When the trenches ran out of everything, men made blades out of the barbed wire pickets, and out of steel salvaged from German field fortifications, a narrow, double-edged spike with a curved knuckle bow bent into the handle. It was quiet, it was free, and it went through a wool greatcoat. Doughboys who saw them in French sectors copied them and had unit blacksmiths make more. That was not smuggling. That was Tuesday. Today, carrying a concealed dirk or dagger in California is a felony under Penal Code 21,310, and the definition is broad enough to swallow anything with a point and 2 edges. A soldier could make one out of the enemy's own wire. His grandson can go to prison for putting one in a jacket pocket. Number 22, the sharpened entrenching tool. Field Manual 21-150 came out in 1942 under the title Unarmed Defense for the American Soldier, and among the throws and the chokes and the sentry work The Army made a point of the shovel every man already carried. Grind the edges. Fold the blade to 90 degrees. Now you have an axe with a handle. Infantrymen sharpened them on whetstones, the way other men sharpened pocket knives. And the tool went on doing double duty for the rest of the war and through Korea. Try that now. The moment a prosecutor can show you put an edge on a shovel and put it in your vehicle, it stops being a shovel and becomes a deadly weapon in the eyes of the statute, and intent is proven with a photograph of the edge. They taught it in basic training. Now the training is the evidence. Number 21, the theater-made fighting knife. In the Pacific, armorers and engineers built knives in forward workshops out of whatever the war left lying around. Worn-out files were ground into blades. Handles were cast from scrap aluminum, from micarta insulators, from plexiglass out of shot-up aircraft canopies, stacked and sanded to fit one man's grip. E.W. Stone Sr., chief molder aboard the USS Holland, poured handles made from Japanese Mitsubishi seaplane propeller aluminum onto U.S. issue blades. Think about that for a second. He melted down the enemy's airplane and put it in an American sailor's hand. Those knives sell for real money at auction today, and in a dozen states the double-edged ones cannot legally be carried at all. The Navy let a man build one on government time. His state will not let him carry it to work. Number 20, the cut-down trench gun. The Winchester Model 1897 with a short barrel, a heat shield, and a bayonet lug was the most American thing to arrive in France, and men fired it from the hip while working the slide, which put 9 buckshot at a time into a trench full of men. In September of 1918, the German government filed a formal diplomatic protest, cited Article 23E of the Hague Annex, and announced that any American captured with one forfeited his life. Pershing told them that any German caught with a flamethrower or a saw-backed bayonet would be lined up and shot. The protest went nowhere. Then, in 1934, our own Congress finished the job the Kaiser's lawyers could not. The National Firearms Act put every shotgun under 18 inches behind a $200 tax stamp, which was more than $4,600 in today's money, and was set at that number specifically to price ordinary people out. Number 19, the Sap. Military police carried them for the entire first half of the 20th century. A flat leather sleeve with lead shot sewn into the head and a spring in the neck, and it was regarded as the humane option because the alternative for a drunk private on a Saturday night was a nightstick to the skull or a .45. Every provost outfit had them. So did half the police departments in America. California Penal Code 22,210 now makes it a crime to manufacture, import, keep for sale, possess, give, or even lend a blackjack, a billy, a sandbag, a sand club, or a sap, punishable by up to a year in county jail. The exemption written into that same statute is for police. The men who were taught to use them are on the wrong side of the line they helped draw. Number 18, the slungshot. A weight on a lanyard, a lead ball in a sock, a length of line with a knot. The sailor's answer to a knife fight in a passageway. It was old before the Civil War, and it never went away, because it costs nothing and it works. Here is what will tell you everything about how these laws get written. Open the New York and California weapons statutes today, and you will find the word slungshot printed right there. A word no American has used in ordinary speech since roughly 1870. The legislature never removed it. They just kept stacking new prohibitions on top of a 19th century list, and the list is still hunting a weapon that most people alive have never seen. Number 17, the paratrooper switchblade. The M2 was adopted in 1940 by the newly formed parachute test platoon because a man tangled in his own risers 100 feet up, has one free hand, and about 4 seconds. It opened at the press of a button. The Air Force adopted its own version in 1958, the MC-1, with bright orange scales, so a downed pilot could find it in the brush. Now read the date again. On August 12th of 1958, the same year, President Eisenhower signed Public Law 85-623, the Federal Switchblade Act, which banned the interstate sale of automatic knives to the American public. Written into that law is an exemption for switchblades manufactured under contract with the armed forces. They outlawed the knife and left themselves a door in the same paragraph. Number 16, the tripwire. Every soldier who ever pulled perimeter duty was taught to wire the approaches, trip flares on the trails, cans on the wire, a warning device rigged to whatever was coming. It was standard, it was expected, and an NCO would chew you out for a lazy job of it. Bring it home, and it is a crime in all 50 states. In 1971, the Iowa Supreme Court decided Cutco versus Briney, the case of a farmer named Edward Briney who rigged a shotgun to a bedroom door in an empty farmhouse he was tired of watching people rob. It fired. The jury sided with the man it hit, and the Brineys had to sell farmland to pay the judgment. The lesson courts took from it is simple, and it has never been softened. You may not delegate the decision to shoot to a piece of string. Number 15, the nail grenade. Guerrilla units in the Philippines, armed and directed by American officers, packed casings with old nails and used what they had, and Army doctrine on improvised munitions has covered field-made grenades ever since. The Army wrote it down. The Army taught it. Today, a homemade grenade is not a gray area. It is a destructive device under Title 26, Section 5845, subsection F of the United States Code, and possessing one unregistered is a federal felony under Section 5861, subsection D, carrying up to 10 years. There is no realistic path to registering one either. The registry has been closed to that kind of thing for decades. The government trained men to build it in a jungle and criminalize the thought of it in a garage. Number 14, the pen gun. The Office of Strategic Services built a single-shot .22 caliber called the Stinger that looked like a fountain pen, and over 50,000 of them were produced and handed out. It fired once, and you threw it away. It was small enough to hide anywhere a pen goes, which was the entire point, and the American government manufactured them by the tens of thousands and put them in the hands of agents and resistance fighters across Europe and Asia. Under the National Firearms Act, any firearm disguised as something other than a firearm is an any other weapon, which means federal registration, ATF approval, and a paperwork trail. Build one at your workbench, and you have committed a felony that carries 10 years. 50,000 of them, paid for by the taxpayer. Read that number again. Number 13, the glove gun. The Sedgley OSS was a single shot, break action, smoothbore 38 special riveted with 6 brass rivets to the back of a leather work glove. You made a fist, you punched, and it fired on contact. It was built for men who might have to work close and quiet and could not be seen carrying anything at all. Here is the strange part. The original Sedgley was later removed from the National Firearms Act list as a collector's item and classified a curio and relic, so an authentic one can be owned outright. Build a copy of that same object in your own shop, and it is an unregistered any other weapon, and you are a felon. The government's version is a collectible. Yours is a crime. Number 12, the silencer. Between October of 1943 and March of 1944, High Standard produced 2,600 HDM pistols for the OSS, serial numbers running from 114,000 to 117,000, a .22 with a suppressor built onto the barrel and designed by the engineers at Bell Labs. It was not a novelty. It was standard equipment for men doing work the country needed done and never intended to discuss. Today, that pistol is an NFA item that moves only through a licensed dealer with federal approval, and the improvised version will finish you. A TF now treats fuel filters sold as solvent traps as unregistered silencers, and a man named Ronnie Candelario was sentenced to 41 months in federal prison over 3.5 years for a piece of automotive plumbing. Number 11, the grease gun. The M3 was the most honest weapon America ever built, a submachine gun stamped out of sheet metal because the country did not have time for machined steel, and the contract price was $18.36, with the bolt assembly subcontracted at $2.58, $20.94 all in. Ugly, crude, and it worked in mud. Tank crews carried them into the 1990s. Then came May 19th of 1986, and the Hughes Amendment slipped into the Firearm Owners Protection Act, which closed the registry to any machine gun manufactured after that date forever. The supply froze at whatever existed. A transferable MAC-10 that sold for $350 in the early 80s runs $15,000 to $25,000 today. That is not safety policy. That is a price floor. Number 10, the Bangalore torpedo. Captain McClintock of the Madras Sappers invented it in 1912 in Bangalore, India, to clear leftover booby traps and barricades. And the American version, the M1A1, is the reason there is a path through the wire on Omaha Beach in every film you have ever seen. It was sections of pipe with a charge on the end, screwed together as long as you needed, and shoved forward from behind cover so that the man doing the pushing was not the man in the blast. Combat engineers assembled them in the field, in the dark, under fire, from components handed out like tent stakes. Every element of it is now a destructive device under federal law. Assembling one outside of a licensed context is not a paperwork problem. It is a federal case. Number 9, the satchel charge. The M37 demolition kit was 8 blocks of high explosive with 2 priming assemblies in a canvas bag with a shoulder strap, and it was carried by men who ran it concrete. On Iwo Jima, the method was flamethrower and satchel charge, over and over, bunker after bunker, for 36 days. Marines and Army engineers spent months in training, learning to build them up, prime them, and place them. It was a taught skill, with a manual and an instructor and a range. Now the same act requires a federal explosives license, a magazine that meets specification, and an inspection regime, and anything cobbled together outside that system is a destructive device charge with a decade attached. The men who cleared those bunkers were 19 and 20 years old. Number 8, the Beano grenade. In early 1944, the OSS, Army Ordnance, and the Eastman Kodak Company introduced the T-13, nicknamed the Beano, and it was built to the exact dimensions of a regulation baseball, 9.5 inches around and about 5 ounces, because the theory was that every American boy already knew how to throw one. It had an impact fuse, so the enemy could not throw it back. Then, testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground went wrong. 5 premature detonations mortally wounded 2 men and injured 44 others. Production was halted and never resumed. The remaining stock was ordered destroyed at the end of the war, and the files on it were classified. That is the whole pattern in one object. The Army built it, the Army handed it out on D-Day, and when it became inconvenient, the Army erased it and locked the paperwork. Number 7, the rifle grenade launcher. The M7 was a 22-millimeter tube that clamped onto the muzzle of an M1 Garand, and with a blank cartridge in the chamber, it threw a grenade 350 meters against the 30 meters a strong man could manage by arm. Fragmentation, anti-armor, smoke. Every rifle squad had the capability, and every rifleman was expected to know it. The launcher itself is still just a piece of steel tube. It is everything you would put in it that ended. Each grenade is its own registered destructive device, and when Congress dropped the National Firearms Act transfer tax to 0, effective January 1st of 2026, it specifically left destructive devices and machine guns out of the relief. They lowered the gate for everything except the things a soldier was actually taught to use. Number 6. The field-built flame weapon. The Navy construction battalions, the Seabees, did not wait for a factory. They built the main armament flame tanks used in the Pacific themselves, mounting flame-throwing systems into tank hulls in forward areas, and those vehicles did work at Iwo Jima and Okinawa that saved American infantry from having to walk into caves. Now, here is a fact that surprises people. There is no federal law against a flamethrower. A TF does not regulate them at all. Your state does. Maryland has banned ownership outright, and the penalty runs to 25 years and a $250,000 fine. California requires a permit for any device that throws a burning stream 10 feet or more, granted in practice mostly to movie productions. Washington does not care what you own. Annapolis will put you away for a generation. Number 5. The guerrilla gun. When the Philippines fell, American officers stayed in the hills and taught villagers to build firearms out of plumbing pipe and old lumber, a soft metal tube, a handle, and a nail for a firing pin. Filipinos called them paltiks. Men like Bonifacio Quizon set up jungle shops and turned out small arms for the resistance, and the whole doctrine was summed up in one phrase: a gun to get a gun. You used it once on an occupier, and you took his rifle. Richardson Industries later sold a version of the concept as the M5 Philippine Guerrilla Gun. The United States government taught foreign civilians to build guns in their kitchens because it believed people under occupation had a right to fight back. California, Connecticut, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, and Washington now make it a crime for an American citizen to build an unserialized firearm in his own house. Number 4. The fire bottle. In September of 1942, the United States standardized it. The frangible grenade M1, a pint glass bottle turned into an anti-armor weapon and issued as ordnance. In 1943, the Army put it on film. The training picture was called Crack That Tank, part of the Fighting Men series, marked restricted and shown to troops only, and about 9.5 minutes in, it demonstrates exactly how an infantryman was expected to use a bottle against armor. Millions of American soldiers sat in a dark room and watched their own government teach it. Today, a fully assembled one is an incendiary bomb, a destructive device under federal law, and courts have said so consistently for decades. Possession is a felony with a decade attached, and prosecutors bring that charge routinely. The film is still online. The lesson in it is a federal crime. Number 3. The Liberator. In 1942, the Guide Lamp Division of General Motors, a company that made headlights, built a pistol called the FP-45. It had 23 parts, most of them stamped sheet metal. It cost $2.10, and 300 employees working around the clock put one together every 6.5 seconds. 1 million of them came off the line in 11 weeks. They shipped in waxed boxes with 10 rounds, a wooden dowel to poke the empty case out, and a wordless comic strip showing a man who could not read English how to use it. And they were pushed out the back of low-flying aircraft over occupied Europe and Asia for anyone on the ground to pick up. No serial number, no registration, no background check. That was the design intent of the United States government. Today, that same gun is everything 6 states have outlawed, an unserialized firearm built in a garage. And on March 26, 2025, the Supreme Court upheld the federal rule on unserialized guns 7-2. America manufactured 1 million of them for strangers. It will not let you make one. Number 2. The Handbook. In 1969, the Department of the Army published TM 31210, the Improvised Munitions Handbook, 256 pages, written for special forces, laid out in 7 sections, covering explosives and propellants, mines and grenades, small arms, mortars and rockets, incendiaries, fuses and delays, and everything left over. Its stated purpose was to increase the potential of special forces and guerrilla troops by describing the manufacture of munitions from ordinary local materials. That is not a rumor, and it is not a conspiracy theory. It was declassified, it entered the public domain, and you can buy a printed copy on Amazon this afternoon or read the whole thing free on the Internet Archive. Understand what that means. It is perfectly legal for you to own the book. It is a federal felony to do what is inside it. The United States government wrote the instructions, cleared them for release, and then made the reader a criminal. Number 1, the one he brought home. Every man on this list who survived came back through a port with a duffel bag, and the Army had rules for it, because war trophies were authorized on purpose to keep morale up. The knife he ground out of a file. The pistol he took off a dead man. Sometimes something a great deal heavier that nobody at the dock looked at too closely. He put it in a footlocker, and he did not talk about it, and it sat in an attic in Ohio for 60 years. Then the law moved underneath him. The Gun Control Act of 1968 came with an amnesty that ended on October 31st of that year, and after that date, an unregistered trophy became a federal offense, carrying up to 10 years, whether the old man knew it or not. Most of them never knew. Bills to fix it, like the Veterans Heritage Firearms Act, have been introduced and have died more than once. So the widow finds it in the closet, and the family is afraid to call anybody about a souvenir a man carried home from a war he was sent to. Go look in the attic before somebody else does. Tell me in the comments, what did your family bring home? Who carried it? And did he ever say one word about it? And tell me what you think of a government that spent 100 years teaching American boys to build these things at taxpayer expense, and then spent the next 50 treating those same men like criminals for knowing how. That knowledge did not die. It just went quiet. It's time to start listening again.